Once again, welcome to you, all the students who is participating for this session. As Dr. Manohar said, that we'll discuss about that research designs applicable for the behavioral sciences, particularly that in extension research. That is, therefore, I put the title into that qualitative and quantitative research designs. There is always a tag of war between the extensionist, those working in India, that whether our work is qualitatively or our work is quantitatively, whether we should focus only on the qualitative research design or will focus only the quantitative research designs. So that in next 1.5 hours, we'll discuss on these issues. But my request is that you are preparing for that ARS, and both at prelims as well as at mains. So therefore, my request will be that you must understand that what I would like to share with you. If you have any doubt in between any time during my presentations, please ask me any questions. Though we have a at last later of this part of this presentation we will discuss, but if any moment, any slides, if any doubt or any questions, please ask me. I will be happy to clear your doubt as far as my knowledge is concerned. Now let's start with that. Now, because this is, we started for the students only, because those who are the technocrats or the experienced, for them we are not talking about that what the research design is. But still, you are preparing for that ARS and NET exams. Therefore, you start from the beginning itself. The research designs, if you ask that in a single sentence, it is nothing but the blueprint of a research work. Blueprint of a research work. Blueprint means each and every details from your thinking process to final report writing. It is clearly been written there. The guidelines. So, if we say about that on 2 lines, that it is an outline of all the activities to be undertaken by the researchers from formulation of hypothesis to final analysis of the data. From where will they get the guidance? That is called that research designs. You know that in management science, one proverb is there that planning done means half work done. Planning done means half work done. So therefore, in research design, the same way it is talking about in our research perspective. If you do your formulate your research design in a very crystal clear or systematic manner, then many questions has to be answers. You can easily defend that control. You can easily defend the external variables. Other things you can easily. Then you can only say that the effect of these variables due to your intervention or due to your research only. That's the Carlingers that I generally used to suggest the previous class also. Today I am also suggesting for this particular chapter that research designs, definitely you have to follow the books of the Carlinger. That particular there are over 3 or 4 chapters is totally dedicated for these research designs. And for that in Indian language at small age you can follow the Kothari's book, but I do not find any book better than the Carlinger. After Carlinger, it is calling that social method, research methodology of social science, probably the Seltage book are also good one to follow these particular chapters. So therefore, I am suggesting you to go to 3 books. First one is the Foundation of Behavioral Research by the Carlinger. Probably these books, it is always I kept in on my table. Every time I used to see, though I have a lot of experience last because both we are the friend of Manohar and myself during our master's times. Since then, I reading these books, and still many times I always used to read these books. Still I'm getting information from these books and new informations. So therefore, if you think that if you are reading these books one time, you will get all the extracted information within you, that is impossible. So we have to read time and time and again to understand all the concept, whatever the Carlinger was telling about you. There is no better book than the Carlinger's in extension research methodology. There, Carlinger himself is telling that research design is the plan, structure, and strategy of the investigation conceived so as to obtain the answer of the research questions and to control the variance. See, once again, I am reading this sentence, what the Carlinger said. The research design is the plan, structure, and strategy of the investigation conceived so as to obtain the answer of the research questions and to control the variance. See, from the sentence written in the blue color and sentence written in the black color. What is the difference between two? In the first, the sentence, what is written in the blue color, there I said that it is all about an outline of the activities from formulation to the analysis. Here, Karlinger gentleman added the two another criteria to be research design. That means it is the blueprint of all the activities, which is taking from the initiation to the final analysis, but at the same time, it must able to answer your research questions. That you know that every research started with a research question or to solve a problem. At the same time, it must able to control the variance. If it is not possible, then it is not a research design. The two basic criteria the gentleman Karlinger imposed the to whom we'll call it research design. Vishal, I will come to this point to you at end of this your presentations. Vishal was asking when we joined in the beginning, we were asking some questions. Just keep remember these 2 points. Now the question is that the answer to what, when, and how, and but what means regarding the research strategy provided with the research designs. This is all about the research design. This all answer will get it. So now the question that why we'll have a good research designs. If you open many of our thesis or research papers, you will not find that the research design part is very poorly written. Though they are following something, but now they are not written in any of the thesis or the papers. But generally, you know that the two purposes research design is there. I've already discussed in Karlinger definition that to provide the answer to the research questions, and second was that to control the variance. A well-planned and executed design help directly to permitting us really in both the observation as well as inference. So if it is not properly designed, then what will happen? That what actually you want to see that your results that will not be observed in your results. So then it will be mixed with all of the errors or others extraneous variables or in others unwanted things will be there. So it will be very difficult to you to quantify that what is the effect you are try to see due to the research. It will not be there. So therefore, mainly two purposes we do the research design. First one is to provide the answer to the research questions, and second one is to control the variance. Before going to in details, there are the research designs. Everybody must know that the principle of the max, mean, and control principle in research design. The principle is generally popularly known as the max, mean, con. Though I wrote it the control, but generally people used to pronounce it as a max, mean, con principle. So what is it is? It is telling that the first of the max. Max means the maximize the experimental variance. Experimental variance means suppose what is your targeted independent variables. Suppose things about that being an extension scientist, our major target is to improve the CASA of an farmers. CASA means knowledge, attitude, skill, and action. Suppose I'm giving suppose I'm organizing a training program to improve the knowledge, skill, and attitude of a farmers towards natural farming, or you may say that organic farming. So organic farming. So what is our here emphasis is that we would like to say after this training, farmer must have improved knowledge, favorable attitude, and better skill, and definitely they will adopt this technology. That they will have an action. So that means the experimental variance. That means this is our experiment that we have to improve it. So we have to design in such a research that it will maximize our experimental variance. That means after that they will have improved their knowledge, attitude, skill, and as well as action. But if it is not properly done, then ultimately it may have that negative effect may have it. So therefore, always we have to keep remember, we have to maximize the experimental variance. Experimental means what is your targeted variables or dependent variables. Second one is minimize the error variance. Error variance means to obtain the error of random variance, including so-called error of measurement. There are several errors may be there. So suppose to whom we are selecting, there may be the education may varied or other things are varied. So that error variance we have to minimize it to maximize the errors or random variances, including so-called the error of measurement. And third thing, to control the extraneous variance. External variance means the control the variance of extraneous or unwanted variables that may have an effect on his experimental outcome, but in which it is not interested. The other variable thing, many things are in societal issues are theirs that may affect this outcome of our maximizing the experimental value. That has to be controlled. Therefore, it is very famously said that maximum con principle. Whenever you design research, any research design, we have to remember these three principles: maximize the experimental variance, minimize the error variance, and control the external variance. Many times I found that exams they have been asked that what about that? What is the max in the maximum con principle of a research designs? Whether it is maximizing error variance, maximizing external variance, maximizing experimental variance, and none of the others. Then you have to definitely click on the option C, that is the maximize the experimental variance. I hope that this way these questions may come in your prelims. As in the mains, many times it is asked that to write about that maximum con principle is short note. Now we'll come to the details about the research designs in our extension research. There are two types of research, but majority of our research we used to do that ex post type factor research designs. That what has already been done, then we are would like to try to find out that why it has happened and what are the variables is responsible. We are applying many statistical tools, regressions. We're applying that path analysis, many things. Principal components we used to apply to understand the reasons behind these things. Suppose if I ask you that to understand that the determinants of the adoption of the Bt cotton in the Bidar region of the Maharashtra or cotton growing regions of this, that means already farmers have adopted. Now we're trying to understand why they have been adopted and what are the major factors behind these things. So that means it is already been happened. Here we do not have any control over that. The manipulating the independent variables. So then we are talking about that the ex post facto research design. In this design, the researcher has no direct control over the independent variables as they have already been manifested. Only inference about the relationship between the independent dependent variables can be drawn, and the effect have already been occurs. And there are two types of ex post facto research design are there. That ex post facto cause to effect design and effect to cause research designs. Two types. Once again, I'm repeating. Ex post facto research design has the two types of research design. First one is that ex post facto cause to effect design. And second one is that ex post facto effect to cause design. The presumed cause is said to be the independent variable, and the presumed effect is said to be the dependent variables. Suppose we take the examples of the adoption of the Bt cotton. So what may be the independent, the adoption of the independent variables? Dependent variables is the adoption of the Bt cotton variety. There are several regions, maybe they are independent variable like that existing variety have that disease-based infestations, farmers awareness, everything may be theirs. So that we may say that due to these regions, adoption of the Bt cotton has been taken place. Second one is that it is talking about the just opposite, that effect to cause design. That means in this presumed regarded the independent variable from which the presumed cause is regarded as the dependent variable is the sometimes that this is happened. This is happened when why this is happened. Then we try to find out the some what are the causes is theirs. Then we try to understand. Suppose now we are understanding that many people are working on that nutrition part of the extension nutrition part. Nutrition. So the peoples are very malnourished in our country peoples. So now they are trying to understand why their malnourishment is there. They sometimes they are finding the cause. Maybe it is due to that their non-affordability the cost, or they do not have food items, or they do not have that means that a complete food item requires. The other thing, these are the causes they are identified with the malnutrition of the rural or village populations. So therefore, there are two types of designs are there because malnutrition has already been there itself. The ex post facto cause to effect design and effect to cause designs. Now, how this design is looks about it? That suppose effect to cause, this is experimental group. That suppose the beneficiary groups or that who have already have the Bt cottons, and another farmers, those who are not using the Bt cotton but from the same regions. This type of we have to select it, Matched, generally in extension research, matched means we used to say that socio-economically it should be matched. It may be the same villages, or it may be that nearby villages, but farmers should have that different same socio-economic status. Then you may think about that their income, or you may think about their land holding. So this may be the matched conditions. And then here presumed cause, that is independent variables, and the presumed effect. Here the farmers have the presumed effect. That means there is no BT cotton adoption is theirs. Sorry, the other variable is theirs. That means they do not have any problem others. So therefore we are finding the presumed effect, that BT cotton adoption rate. So this way we are usually try to identify that what is the major causes theirs. And another is that effective cause design, that I told that is same thing, matched will be there. Here it will be that assumed the cause and assumed effect will be theirs. So you may have a doubt in the mind that how it will be possible to have this type of research design used in our study. Suppose here we have a study that impact of extension intervention improving livelihood of the dairy farmers in the district of West Bengal. We had a study and we published a good journal in tropical animal health and production. It's a good nurse rating, near about 7 nurse rating is there. There generally every KVK, every institute has their extension wings. They used to do extension work in the village itself. The same thing we did it, and then we try to understand that always our authority is asking us to have an impact study, that whatever we are doing last many years, what is the effect that we studied it. How we put it studied. Here we studied that the dairy farmers of our experimental village. That means every institute have their adopted villages. So from this farmer we selected, that we call the beneficiary. That means the farmers from the adopted villages, dairy farmers. And we matched the socio-economic, socio-cultural background, means the same land holding, same animal holding we selected from the nearby villages. And there we call that non-beneficiary farmers. Yeah, presumed cause, that means we have that extension intervention, like that training, demonstration, exposure visit, extension literatures, animal health camps, dairy mill, etc. We did it. And what is the effect we see is that their knowledge, attitude, and adoption of scientific dairy farming practices, milk production, monthly income. These are the dependent variables. Up to what level it is improved due to this effect, because we do not have the pre-data. So therefore we matched with a non-beneficiary of the control villages, and their knowledge we check it, and same background, then it is assumed that they will have the same knowledge, and whatever the improved or improved knowledge will be there from the experimental village, that will be due to the intervention through our institutions. These are the institutions we did it. And what is the difference we said it? It is told that it is due to intervention. So there we use that ex post facto cause to effect research design we are using it. These are the mainly intervention we did it. So there is a list we did it, and then we found that it is significantly improvement both in that overall knowledge, and each parameter of the knowledge we said it. We said it seen in case of that that is attitude score also it is improved, and accordingly we see that adoption score also it is improved, and we statistically tested. We found that almost a significant one. And according to the production, milk production, and the income of the dairy farming. So that means see that this qualitative data we transform into the quantitative way, and to put that this is the due to happened increase in knowledge, attitude, adoption, milk production, and income due to our extension intervention. We proved it through a good research design. We applied it. But next is that this is about that survey type of research design, and another is that the experimental research designs. The experimental research design means that observation under the controlled conditions. Observation under the controlled condition, it is called the experimental research. Generally, people used to habituated in that mainly the biological sciences like agronomy, plant breeding, other things. But in our social science also we started doing that experimental research in social science heavily way it is coming way, but there are some limitations is there. So therefore we are talking about that. This is not experimental research, true experimental research. We are talking about that quasi-experimental research designs. That observation under, that means simple sentence, if you understand that what is the experimental research. Experimental research, nothing but a observation under a controlled conditions. Experimental research concerned with that examinations of the effect of the independent variables on the dependent variables, where the independent variables is manipulated through the treatment or interventions, and the effect of this intervention is observed on the dependent variable. Suppose Dr. Manohar is organizing such type of that tutorial for your ARS and net to fulfill your net and ARS aspirations. So that we may put it into the experimental research. So here we used to say the independent variable means that that means a different type of classes you are taking to fulfill your aspiration. That is that your net and ARS examinations. Where the independent variable is manipulated through treatment of intervention. Manipulated means he is organizing several coaching classes, like today I'm taking on research design, other things. So he's thinking about what it will be required to improve it. That means he's the manipulating, the replicating your requirement, and then ultimately it will be observed that when the result will come, that how many are being selected, how many will be being selected. So that means that it will be the improved number. So that means it is a control conditions where we are nurturing you, Dr. Manohar nurturing you, and then ultimately you will get a result. So that means you will be selected in ARS and NET. So this way that in many extension research we are doing in NDRI, we started working that experimental research design. I will show when examples how it can be used it. Now, when we are talking about the experimental research, there are three types of experimental research are there. True experimental research, quasi-experimental research, and pre-experimental research designs. Now, we question that what is the true experimental research designs? True experimental research design means where the researchers have the complete control over the extraneous variables. That means that the same control chambers it will be theirs. There will be no others variable will affect others. But in social science, sometimes it is very difficult. Because suppose I'm passing you to the knowledge to these classes, but at the same time you are Googling it, you are reading several books, other things. So that may improve your knowledge and to crack the ARS exams. So on that cases, it will not be theirs. But when we suppose we do any experimental in our laboratories or our experimental field, it is a total complete is theirs. So that means the true experimental means that can predict confidently that the observed effect on the dependent variable is only due to the manipulation of the independent variables. That means there is no other effect. Suppose when we experiment on the mice, then we are using this true experimental research. We are injecting something, and then we are trying to see how the body growth has been improved. This is the true experimental research design. What are the essential characteristics of the true experimental research designs? There are three principles are there: replication, randomizations, and control. There are three principles of an experimental research design. If you read any books, it is clearly written: the replication, randomizations, and local control. But in extension, or here we used to say that instead of the replication, we are taking the manipulation. How many times we are organizing these tutorial classes? How many times we are trying a training program to improve the capacity of a farmer's community? The manipulation refers to the conscious control over the independent variable by the researchers through treatment or intervention to observe its effect on the dependent variables. Suppose I was telling that the farmers has been improved their the capacity. Then we are organizing several training programs on the organic farming. So many times we are suppose one time we are doing the training programs, one time we are doing the demonstrations, other things. That means it's your conscious control of the independent variables. Means how will plan this in our hand, and according we are replicating the training. We may have the 1 day, 3 day, 5 trainings, 4 trainings, or several parts of the training. One time is the production training, the processing training, another time the marketing of the training of the organic products. At the same time, demonstration also we used to do. Then through treatment or intervention. Treatment means we are organizing several training programs. We are organizing several demonstration to observe effect on the dependent variable. That means the adoptions of the organic farming practices. This is the manipulation. That means it is the in hand of the researchers. Control means, see that in research designs, you see that major emphasis was given the two aspects. Once again, I'm repeating. First one is that to answer the research questions. Second one is that to control the extraneous variables. So control is more important part in any research designs. Just think about that. Many times we used to complain that many of our culprits are getting released due to the faulty law of our constitutions. But it is not like that. Our constitutions or our law says that it is nothing wrong that if anybody got did not found guilty, though he did it and had the guilty, but not a single innocent should not be the punished. Accordingly, here that in research design that control has to be there. That means sometimes you are you unable to observe the effect of your experimental variables, but it should not be misinterpreted the results through the extraneous variables. So control is giving the major emphasis on the research and design. Control refers to the use of the control group and the controlling the effect of the extraneous variables on the dependent variable in which research is are interested. The subject in the control and experimental groups are similar in number of characteristics. You see that when we select it, then we said that a matched one, but true match is very difficult. There are several statistical tools are available to select the true matched sample through, you may say that a PCM and PCM in the propensity score matching, others are there. But generally, we used to say that the same socioeconomic characteristics, sociocultural characteristics, agroecological characteristics, we used to say that either through the land holding or other through the income accordingly we used to do. But their subject the control group receive, but that here the experimental group will receive the treatment, but control group will not receive any treatment. And the experimental group receive the planned treatment interventions, and a comparison is made with the control group to observe the effect of the treatment of the intervention. So one group will receive the treatment that the experimental group, another group will not receive, and when we will minus it from experimental control group, then we need to find that yes, this is happened or improvement is there due to the or intervention only, because there we can say that intervention only because we put a control group. Now next one is the randomization, is another important features that through random assignment of the subject under experimental or control group, chances of systematic bias is eliminated. Always you have to select the sample in the randomization, therefore systematic biasness will be possible to remove. You know that last year probably that gentleman or Dr. Abhijit Banerjee win the Nobel Prize due to his that innovation, not innovation, we will say the discovery, that means use of the RCT in our social science research. Use of RCT in the social science research. RCT was used specifically for the medical sciences and the other sciences, but he applied in the social science research. RCT nothing but the randomized control trial. That means randomized control trial means to whom will select that experimental farmers, who will select that control farmer, that is been selected through the randomization only. Every stage you have to do the randomizations. So after application of this, you won the Nobel Prize and see that how experimental research is possible in the social science. The randomization is used to true experimental research design to minimize the threat of the internal validity and the external variables to eliminate the external variables to on the dependent variables. You have to select it, because in a village several farmers will be several attitudes, several other things, education level, their cosmopolitness, localness will be different. That may affect to the adoption of the BT cotton technology. So therefore you have to select the farmers without any bias. You should not select to religion specific, caste specific, or not education specific. Your target is only the simple criteria, land holding or other things. So if you select the randomization, so this type of error maybe will be possible to removed from your study. Through randomizations, on average, the characteristics of the subject or experimental groups are similar. Thus, influence of the external variable dependent variable is eliminated by disappearing the validity and variability of this subject characteristics equally both the groups. So there are three major principles in experimental research. The replication, that is where we talk about that manipulations, control, and the randomization. See, two type of principle we discussed here. First, we discussed about that max mean con principle. Another second, that is maximum con principle, is total about the characteristics of research designs. Here we discuss about that principles of the experimental research design. There we talk about that replication or manipulation, control, and the randomization. These principles, many exam it has been asked, so you have to clear cut idea to whom will call the randomization, to whom will call the control, to whom will call the manipulations, or in the long type question if it is asked that write that principles of experimental design, then you have to write these three principles. There are several types of true experimental research designs are there. So all things are not discussed here. So, I told you follow the books of that Karlinger. There you can get details of these things. But sometimes in extension research, true experimental research design are not being used. So generally people used to avoid to read it. But here I will discuss that what is mainly majority have the use in our study. That is that post-test and post-test only, pre-test, post-test only. Under the Solomon four-group design, factorial design, crossover design, randomized block designs, factorial designs, these are the designs there. If you follow the books of the Karlinger, you can easily understood it. I will not discuss here. That suppose I discuss two on the post-test only control design. Post-test means suppose we have that we have select that farmers and randomly we assign to them experimental farmers and the control farmers, and then we have been given the treatment, suppose training or whatever may be. Post-test measurement we got it, and here in control group we got a post-test measurement only. Then we see the difference between the post-test values from the experimental group and control group, and then we see the difference between two. Though many times people are talking about that this is an inadequate research design pre-test, but suppose sometimes it's happened that we do not have the possible to have that pre-data available. Suppose we do not know that whether COVID-19 pandemic will come or not before that March 2019. Suppose if you are planning a research study is in such a way that impact of the farm advisory during COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of the farming community of the trans-Gangetic plant region of India. Suppose you have a study, which type of research design use? Because here pre-data is not possible because you have no idea about the COVID will come. So let's take the data and then we'll do the again post data. In such situation, this research design will be used. That experimental group, the treatment and post group. Suppose then some farmers will give that advisory, some farmer will not give it, and then when we see the difference, then we can say that this is the good mental health status of the experimental group due to the advisory services during the COVID pandemic situations. Next one, the pre-test, post-test only the control designs. Again, here we see that pre-test, post-test only and control designs. So what we did it, we randomly assigned that control group and experimental group, and that experimental group we did on the pre-test measurement, and then treatment and post-test. Here the control group also we did the pre-test, and then we do treatment is there and post-test. Then we do see that the difference between these two. Then we say that this is happened due to that mainly the treatment effect. Suppose I took an examples of this research design is the effectiveness of a mobile app on the adoption of eco-friendly dairy farming by the farmers of the Eastern Haryana. So we know that when we are planning for this and what is the adoption rate of that eco-friendly dairy farming practices, we can have that pre-data both the control experimental group, and then we expose that the mobile app to the experimental farmers with all the details, and then we hope that they will adopt something by going through these mobile applications, and then we post measurement after certain time, and then we do the pre-test and post-test measurement was there. Then we have a difference between both the control group and experimental group. Then we say that this is all about that effect improvement in the adoption of the eco-friendly dairy farming due to the mobile app only. Because why? Because one group we have exposed, another group we do not have the exposures are theirs. This is the our true experimental research design. Now we come to that major important part, that quasi-experimental research designs. Many times in the ARS exam, this question has been asked: to whom will call that quasi-experimental research design? Both that in your objective type of question paper as well as subjective type of question paper. That quasi-experimental research design involves the manipulation of independent variable to observe the effect of dependent variables, but it lacks at least one of the two characteristics of the two experimental designs, either it is randomizations or in the control group. See, just recall what are the principles we said about that true experimental research design. We talked about the three principles: manipulations, randomizations, and control. Manipulation means that what the treatment will give it. That is, you have to give here also. So when the lack of any one characteristic, other two characteristics, that is a control or randomization. Sometimes we are forced to take some samples, or sometimes it is not possible to have the control group. Then we should talk about that it is a quasi-experimental research. Quasi means that half-hearted work is theirs. Because we have to, because our laboratory is not that in 4 into 4, 10 by 10 wall or within a confined field. Our laboratory is the village itself. here there are many things is beyond our control. So therefore, many times, all the times we generally use that our quasi-experimental research designs, which is lacking of either any one. That is only that randomization or control group. Many times the question has been asked that in quasi-experimental research design, which features of the experimental design is lacking, whether manipulations, randomizations, control, or randomization and control. Then definitely your answer will be that with the lacking of that any one, the randomizations or control. It is not only for the manipulation, only for the randomization, only for the control. It may have any one. So in the other words, the quasi-experimental research design have an element of manipulations, but a lack of at least one of the two other proper characteristics, the randomization and the local control. And that is, I'm talking about two times I'm giving emphasis that you should recall, you can recall during your exam time. The two experimental design are generally used to establish the causality, that is the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. In a situations where the researchers are not able to randomly assign the subjects to groups, or for various reasons of no control group is available for an experimental study. These situations generally we used to have this quasi-experimental research design. What type of research designs? I'm giving some examples. Many times it is asked to write a brief notes on the different experimental. Probably some students was telling me the last time also they have been asked to write that quasi-experimental research design in the long question answer type. So suppose either non-randomized control group designs or non-equivalent control group designs. So nomenclature is telling that it is that non-randomized. That means here we compromise the randomized principle of the experimental research. We have the control group, we have the manipulation, but our lacking is a non-randomizations. So there means here experimental group is there, control group there, but this selection of these groups we do not have that with the basis on the randomizations. But with another two characters, that the treatment is manipulation, the treatment is there, and both control and experimental group is there. Suppose you took an example that impact of the climate resilient agriculture practices or the rice variety in improving livelihood of the farmers of the coastal Odisha. Sometimes to whom will select the farmers, that village panchayat leaders are sometimes asking that this will be the motivated farmer, you may select these things, this thing. So on the time randomizations we are compromised. So this way we used to select this example. Next one is that pre-experimental research designs. Pre-experimental research design means absence of the characteristics of a true experimental research design. Absence of the characteristics of true experimental research design. That means one shot case designs or one group pre-test and post-test design. Pre means it is a very what is called that it is an inadequate research design or effect, that is that diseased research design. What we can say that it is a most ineffective research designs. Just hold 1 minute. One shot case designs and one group pre-test post design that I told you is the most inadequate or ineffective research designs are there, but still people are using these research designs. If you read this Kallingar book, Kallingar himself, this design should not be used, but sometimes several limitations is there. Then on the time we used to have this experimental research design, pre-experimental research designs. It will be very clear when we look at some examples of this. Slide is visible to you?
Yes, they are visible.
Yeah. One shot case design is that here I took an example. Have an experimental group will be there, only treatment will be there, and post-test will be there. Means suppose that we are using the capacity building of the farmers on that natural farming or organic farming. So just we give a training and we assume that their knowledge has been improved. Suppose here I took an example here. The impact of immediate and direct cash transfer benefit on the shock minimization among the victim of the Amphan extremely severe cyclonic storm in southern West Bengal. Once again, I'm reading this example. Impact of immediate direct cash transfer benefit on the shock minimizations among the victims of the Amphan extremely severe cyclonic storm in the southern West Bengal. See, here there is no scope to have that pre-data because we do not have that much awareness that Amphan will come. So we have to have money has to be given directly to just to immediate shock minimizations and to rebuild their houses or meet the daily needs. So let's have the data because it was not possible. And at the same time, how will take the control farmers because here the government policies that those who have affected all has to get the treatment or that all get the money themselves. So we do not have the possibility to have that control group that who have been victims but do not receive the money. It's not possible. So in these cases that we used to say that if I give the money, then definitely their shock minimizations will be theirs. So this type of when this type of situation will be there, generally we used to have this type of designs will be theirs. Another one is that one group pre-test and post-test designs are theirs. That experimental group will be theirs, but we'll take a pre-test measurement and post-test measurement and we'll do this one. Here there is no control group will be theirs and no randomization will be there. That means, see, in the true experimental design, we are following three principles: the replication, randomization, and control. And in quasi-experimental designs, treatment we are following, but we are compromising with any one of the two, that is randomizations and the control group and the control group. But in case of that pre-experimental design, we are compromised with the true character, that is that randomization as the control group. Only we are giving emphasis on the treatment group. That means that manipulation part or replication part we are emphasizing. I hope that you have understood that what the basic difference between the three: true experimental research design, quasi-experimental research design, pre-experimental research design. In true experimental research design, we are following the three principles in toto. In quasi-experimental designs, we are following the only manipulations, but lacking of any one of either control or randomizations. But in pre-experimental research designs, we have the lacking of the both randomizations as well as the control. We have only follow the manipulation or replication part. But many times, suppose this is an example, we took the effectiveness of the disaster mitigation strategies on improving adaptive capacity of the coastal farming community of the eastern coastal region of India. This is an example, I took it. Effectiveness of the disaster mitigation strategies on improving adaptive capacity of the both coastal farming community of the eastern coastal regions of the India. Here see that we have the farmers from the coastal regions. So their pre-post data we are giving before giving any exposure to the or training or demonstration of disaster mitigation strategy. Who will be the control farmers? Because control farmer will from the non-coastal regions, so it is not possible because they will not be seeing that disaster mitigation strategies, because we assume that each and every farmer of the coastal region has to improve their adaptive capacity. So therefore, we generally used to give the full, the complete enumerations. So in these situations, we have to have this type of research designs will be followed because we are not having the randomizations on group and coastal designs. Now the question is that one time a question is asked that what should be the best experimental or research designs for extension research. Here I would like to give a discussion with starting an example. Suppose if we have a research programs on that impact of mineral mixture supplementations on the economic outcome of the dairy farmers in PR and action research, because you know that or you may take any other examples that any improved variety of that drought-prone regions, drought resistance varieties of rice or any of the millets crops to improve the socioeconomic status of the farmers and any other. Suppose here I took these examples and accordingly I took the subject means or sample the dairy farmers. Here independent or variable or treatment, what is there? The mineral mixture supplementation, the mineral supplementation will be there. What are the dependent variables I took it? That we took it the milk productions per day per animal. Lactation length means how many days it give the milk. And the inter-calving period. Inter-calving period means what are the distance and gaps between the two consecutive calving. There are some standards there, so therefore we took it. Accordingly, you may set in your examples like the drought resistance variety for the Vidarbha regions of the Maharashtra. Then accordingly, you may see that mainly that use of this particular drought resistant variety, and then accordingly you may see their productions, their income, mandates, improvement, mandates, engagement. Accordingly you put the dependent variables or yield. You may take it into consideration, or you may consider that drought resistance we are talking about, that irrigation water requirement. Accordingly you may put the dependent variables. So how you take the sample? Suppose this is I took at the background to blue color, that is the state of the Bihar. This is a yellow color that is round, that is for the districts, and the suppose in the red color is the black color circle with the block. And I randomly selected from that 3 districts, and accordingly from each districts I selected 6 block, and then 6 blocks, and from each blocks I selected 3 villages. Total 54 villages is there, and then randomly I'm assigned that control villages will be 27, and the experimental village will be the 27. Randomly I'm assigned the total, and then dairy farmers from each villages I selected 10 dairy farmers with certain criteria, 2 animals or 5 milk animals will be there. So 554 sample will be there. So that means our total sample for the experimental sample will be 270, and control sample will be that 270. So this will be our the difference in difference. Experimental, sometimes it's called the quasi-experimental research design. This is the best and gold standard research designs applicable in the extension research. Why we are talking about that? Suppose here it is a pre-test, pre-test and post-test. The pre-intervention measurement, post-intervention measurement, control group with there, treatment group, that experimental group with there. So here you will say that, sir, previously we told that the pre-test, post-test, control, and experimental group. What is the difference between these two? The previously discussed and this DID model, that difference experimental research design. Because here we are taking into consideration the time and the time of the intervention. That because it is assumed that now world is progressing. Suppose when we do an experiment, it may take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Within the time being the 4 years, farmers are learning many things from the outside, different media, mobile phone, and others way. So that time has been taken into consideration in this particular model. That has not been considered in the our previous model, the pre-post control and experimental designs. So here we are taking that what is the in between time when the time has been passed away, that what is the automatically gained by the control farmer and what will gained by the treatment farmers, including the time and as well as that intervention that we took it as a consideration. So here we are considering the time as a variable that has an effect on the both the control and experimental groups, and then that we minimize this effect through this difference quasi-experimental research designs. This will be the model of this one. Then we are putting the impact here, that is my experimental group, control group. Sometimes if it is quasi-experimental research, then we are having some randomizations. It is our the non-randomizations, or if it is randomized distributed control experimental group, then it is called about that true experimental research design. If it is not randomly designed assigned, then we will say that the quasi-experimental research design. Both the control group will be, the experimental group will be there, and treatment will be there. 2 times measurements will be there, pre-test and post-test, both the control experimental group. But in the control group, there will be no treatment effect will be there itself. So that I already told, if it is non-randomly distributed, then it is a non-randomized, only the pre-test, post-test control research design, it will be there only. So suppose things about that here I told you that effect will be that D1 minus D0, C1 minus D0. D1 means that effect of the control group, experimental group after the interventions, and D0 is that milk productions before the interventions, and C1 is that milk productions in post-test measurement. C0 is the pre-test measurement of the milk production of the control group. D means the experimental group, C means the control group. Now here 1 means the post-test measurement, and 0 means the pre-test measurement. So see that here control group also has some improvement due to the time has been time gap, and they learn from the many sources. So suppose here I took an example that milk productivity of the treatment group in the pre-test measurement, it is D0, that is 6.5 liters, and milk productivity of the control group in the pre-test measurement is 6.3 liters, and milk productivity of the treatment group in the post-test after the intervention is 7.7 liters, and that milk productivity of the control group has improved, that is 6.8 liter in the post-test measurement. So see, in both the group have increased the milk production because control farmers also learn from the many sources. Therefore, he or she is able to increase the productivity of his animal by 0.5 liters. Whereas in case of the experimental group, they have able to improve their productivity near about 1.2 liters. So 1.2 liter minus 0.5 liter, the 7.5 liter is the per day per month. This is the effect due to the interventions. We recently had a study on our farmers, that is the impact of the agromet advisory services on the farmers' decision making on different farm operations. That we studied through one of the students in the Kerala. Here we selected some farmers, that experimental farmers, given the block level agromet service bulletins prepared by the agromet field unit Velaini in Tiruvananthapuram through a WhatsApp twice a week from January 6 to 30th June, and another group of farmers, 60 farmers, who do not give any this type of advisor is there, and then we assume that they have some changes in their operational decision in the farm itself, and there we took at some dependent variables here: the land preparation, selection of variety, date of sowing, seed rate, fertilizer application, herbicide application, pesticide application, irrigation, harvesting, and weeding and pruning, and upon dairy farming also. We thought that 6 months they will have little bit change in their operational decision, when to do and what to do and how to do and how much to do. They will did something change through this agromet advisory services. This way we put it, and you see that for both the group, the control and experimental group, we have the pre-test measurement, post-test measurement. Accordingly, we see the treatment effect. Treatment effect, simple, what we calculated: D1 minus D0 minus C1 minus C0. That is the treatment effect. That we told that this is the improvement. The positive means this is a positive effect due to this agromet advisory services. We different crops we took it. For the banana we took it, and but now the question is that whether the treatment effect is significantly is there or not. That we talk it the time variance. That here it is the T means the time. Here the time. Here it is the treatment effect. It is the time effect, and both the interaction of the treatment effect, the time effect, we have to analyze it. Whenever it is significant, then we can say it is a positive and significant treatment effect is there. Then we found that farmers have a significant operational decision was there in the land preparation, date of seed sowing, and scheduling and pesticide of the herbicide application, and storage and transportation. In these 4 cases, they have a positive and significant treatment effect is there due to that interventions of the agromet advisory services is theirs. So see, not only that from the here we can see that the positive means there is some significant improvement is theirs, but all improvement are not the significant one. Significant that with the time variance, we are interaction effect. We studied it in the model previously. I showed it this model here. This model means here y means suppose the dependent variable beta 0 and b1 time and intervention, and it is interaction effect. Many software you can use apply it. Generally, we apply it here in Starter software. There we can very easily see the farmers have the significant impact is there. See here in almost in all cases except wheat management, all cases is the positive one. That means some positive treatment effect is there. But when we see the significant impact with the time variance, then we see that only land preparation, date of seed sowing, and other scheduling of the pesticide and herbicide applications, and storage and transportation, they applied it because they are mainly they followed this by seeing our forecasting message regarding the rainfall forecasting. So therefore they have a significant impact to us theirs. Accordingly, the other things we also consider dairy farming practices also. So this is all about that our quantitative research designs. Another one is the most important part is that qualitative research designs. Qualitative research designs means that simple that that what Vishal you are asking in the beginning, that whether you should talk about it is a type of research or it is a type of research design. We say, but there is a great debate is going on. Many books, many literature. I found that still many people have all the same. The doubt is there, but many people are there in qualitative research design using that ethnographic study they are doing a different context. Suppose we had a study on that dairying amongst that Monpa pastoral nomads of this Then about that ethnographic study, we know that, I hope that you people know what ethnographic means when you are studying in the natural setting with staying with them in their local situations. When generally we used to study the peculiar characteristics of a particular ethnic community, when applying this type of research designs. Here mainly we are observing their scenarios and sometimes interview, and accordingly we are interpreting it. Narrative means narrative research design for quality research designs. Many times in exams it asks that discussed about that quality research designs in, with examples. The narrative research design is that the narrative research and the individual experience and the consequences. Individual experience and consequences. That is suppose in case study type research when we are doing individual experience and consequences. We are writing it. Then the stories from the individual documents. Here generally we used to have on the particular peoples. Why? What is the difference between the narrative and case studies? There's in case studies generally we used to have discussed only the successful case studies. But here in narrative, we also studied different types of failures part also. Suppose in our divisions, once thesis got award on that Jawaharlal award, basis research there, he studied only the 9 narratives of the successful grassroots innovators. Grassroots innovator means farmers himself did a lot of changing, lot of innovations they did to suit their situations. That he reflected and studied what the creativity each and every cases individually he studied. Only 9 sample was there, and that thesis got the Jawaharlal awards because so critically he did it. Just narrative they did it. And phenomenological research study that people who have the experience on a particular phenomenon. Suppose I'm studying that migration pattern of a pastoral community. Pastoral community have the several part of their life. But when I'm studying their particular phenomena like the migratory patterns, I'm studying their, suppose I'm studying their use of the ethno-veterinary practices or ethno-ecological practices, what they're using. It's a particular phenomena when I'm studying it. Then we are you apply the phenomenological study. Now the question is to who will be your sample? Only those who have the experience of this particular phenomena, they will be your sample. Accordingly, we may write down the result system. And grounded theory means develop a theory grounded in the field data. Means whatever the theory we are getting it, and that has to establish to collecting the data at the field level, and then accordingly we interpret it. The interview, then open and Excel codings there, and finally the case studies. Case study, everybody know that the generally we used to say why people are successful in this particular sphere or sector. Then we observing and accordingly we are recording. Now nowadays another quality research design was there that here I have not discussed. That is that what is called that. I forget the terminology. That is where that thematic analysis. Thematic analysis can usually do the when we're interviewing the farmers, that why farmers are suppose people are now providing the natural farming. People are propagating to the concept of that organic farming. People are giving the concept of that rearing of indigenous animal. Then we do the thematic analysis to understand. Because here we believe that each and individual has the equal have that unique one, each and individual respondents, and so they are thinking, their way of analyzing, analytical minds are different. So everybody has to be interviewed, and then their data has to analyze, and then theme will be identified from each of interviewed, and then we'll identify that why they are using this. That is thematic analysis we are doing. Several fuzzy cognitive mapping approach people are using nowadays as a qualitative research design, just applying the thematic analysis. So how many qualitative research we have discussed? We discussed about the 6. First one, the ethnographic. Second one is the narrative. Third one is the phenomenological research design. Fourth one is the grounded theory. Fifth one is the case study, and sixth one is that thematic analysis. Because I used to have a lecture on thematic analysis for 1 or 2 hours, so here I am not discussing all this. So this is the all about that research design applicable in the particularly behavioral sciences or the social science research, with major emphasis on the extension research designs, extension research. Now I will come to Vishal to your queries. That is, you have talked about that to whom will call it is a research type or research designs. I hope from my entire presentation you understood when we are talking about quantitative research design, then we have a clear-cut idea that nothing was discussed about the different type of research. But when you're talking about the qualitative research design, we are getting confused whether to say that it is a qualitative research design or quantitative research designs. But remember two things: to whom we will call the research design, they have the two characteristics. It must give the research questions, and it will have control the extraneous variables. So why you say that here the control external variable? Because suppose take about the phenomenological. Here control, how will controlling it? Because we are selecting the sample where the particular experienced on this particular aspect. Ethnographic study, suppose that those who are these particular ethnic groups have been using these particular practices, suppose daring amongst the we are using them as a sample. So this way we are controlling the other groups. So whenever you will have the confuse, just to recall these two theory, two principles, that is to whom we call research design. Research design has the characteristics of to answer the research questions, and the second one is that have the capacity to control the extraneous variables. Okay, so this is all about from my side. And now I kept for the 15 minutes to discuss with you. Please let me know that each and everyone's your queries or questions. I will try to address as per my capacity. Anyone, please.